When people are learning other languages, they usually find plenty of other features in the language that are different from their mother tongue. Sometimes they find features so bizarre that they go, wow, French is weird, which it is. But when thinking about it, French is one of the most commonly spoken languages in the world, with hundreds of millions of speakers. And lots of people who don't even speak the language have had at least a little bit of exposure to French, from Africa to North America to parts of Polynesia. With all this familiarity, can French really be considered weird? But if we take the inverse, a language hardly anyone has ever heard of, we don't really get a weird language, but an obscure one. A language that's either already extinct, or is on its deathbed with only a few living elderly speakers left. That's not weird, that's sad. So then, how do we measure weirdness? Well, we don't. Weirdness is inherently subjective. What may seem weird to some may feel like common sense to others, and what may feel familiar and logical to you may seem strange to a speaker of a different language. It's all about familiarity and perspective, and holding weirdness to objective standards yields results that seem wrong to us subjectively. In one study that tried to answer this question, German got ranked as the 10th weirdest language, out of 239. Now I'm sure there's hardly anyone proclaiming on the streets, German is really weird. Again, it's spoken by millions upon millions of people. There's nothing subjectively weird with German. It may just feel a bit different to some people. With that in mind, which languages are weird to lots of people? And since we're throwing objectivity out of the window, I'm going to share some languages that have certain traits about them that make them very weird to me, and probably to most other people as well. Disclaimer, a language being weird is far from a bad thing. Each language is special in their own way, and these are just some languages that I felt were interesting to talk about. Weird is cool. With that long preamble out of the way, let's talk about some weird languages, starting with Basque. Part of what makes Basque a bit weird is that we don't really know where it came from. Basque is a language isolate, which means that there are 0 known languages that are related to it. This is pretty common worldwide, but not in Europe where virtually every language is Indo-European, and if not then at least Uralic. It's truly an anomaly within the region, with just how different it is from all of its neighboring languages, with all of its agglutination in both nouns and verbs, and ergativity, where nouns are objects by default as opposed to subjects, and where subject markers turn into object markers based on transitivity. There are even conspiracies about it being a language brought over by aliens or spoken by Atlanteans, and a tale about the devil attempting to learn Basque for 7 years and only managing to learn the words yes and no. But while Basque is weird, we can get weirder. Brace yourselves. Basque Icelandic Pidgin. Basque Icelandic Pidgin. You may be wondering, how on earth did this happen? Well, during the 16th and 17th centuries, the Basque were one of the first commercial whalers, and sailed all across Europe and made it as far as Canada. And as such, they needed to communicate with locals wherever they went. What you get is a pidgin based on Basque, with a weird mix of Romance and Germanic vocabulary and even grammar thrown in. Basque Icelandic Pidgin probably wasn't even developed in Iceland. All surviving glossaries of the language have been found in Iceland, and that's why it's called Basque Icelandic Pidgin. But given that Basque, and even Icelandic, are pretty weird languages on their own, with not that many speakers each, which makes Basque Icelandic Pidgin a language most people wouldn't expect to even exist, and it earns its spot as one of the world's weirdest. The next weirdest language on this list is Spanish. No, seriously. Spanish has got to be one of the most normal languages, at least to me personally. It doesn't do anything super wacky or weird with its grammar, the phonology is pretty simple and straightforward, and I've had quite a bit of exposure to the language, along with many other people. But of course, Spanish isn't the same everywhere. Some of its varieties can get very different from each other. But there's one variety that's even weirder than all the rest. So weird that it's not even spoken. It's whistled. That's right. There's a whistled register of Spanish, el silbo comero. It was initially used by the Guanche, the original inhabitants of the Canary Islands, to communicate through deep valleys and steep mountains, up to 5 kilometers away, before being adapted to fit Spanish when the Spanish colonized it. Today, all the locals can understand it, and it's a critical part of the island's cultural identity. And when your language sounds more like birds singing than humans talking, you know you've got something special. Moving on, but staying inside Africa geographically, we get Ta, or Ko, a Khoisan language spoken in Botswana and a tiny bit of Namibia. How do you spell Ko, you ask? Like this. Buckle up! Ta has gotta be the weirdest sounded language by far. The Eastern dialect has at least 58 consonants, 31 vowels, and 4 tones. The vowels are actually just the classical 5-vowel system, a, e, I, o, and u, but they can be murmured, glottalized, both murmured and glottalized at the same time, pharyngalized, or strident. I didn't even know what strident meant before making this video. And that's not even factoring nasalization, length, and tone. But what really takes the coconut cake in ko are its consonants. It has some pretty weird consonant phonemes like tzh, but the distinctive part of the language are its numerous clicks. It has as few as 83 distinct click consonants. For reference, Ubich, the language with the highest recorded amount of non-click consonants, has 86 consonants. And this is the minimum estimate. Needless to say, Ko takes everything about sounded phonology to an extreme. Just look at these IPA transcriptions. There are other Khoisan languages that share similar traits, but Ko takes everything to a whole nother level. But as much as I can tell you about Ta or Basque Icelandic Pidgin or Silbo Comero, I can't tell you about any of the features of Sentinelese. Spoken on North Sentinel Island of the Andaman Islands in the Indian Ocean, its speakers are infamous for being cut off from the rest of the world and for being very hostile to anyone who dares come close to their island. As such, it is very hard, deadly, and illegal to try to go to the island and get information about the Sentinelese language from the locals. As such, the language is surrounded by an aura of mystery, and as these people have been isolated for who knows how many years, with mostly primitive technology, there's no telling what could happen with the language's development that we don't know about. Linguists theorize it may be related to some other languages spoken on the Andaman Islands, those being Onge and Jarawa, but speakers of those languages haven't been able to understand it. Also, it's worth mentioning that both of these other languages are critically endangered, and they literally brought some speakers of Onge over to North Sentinel Island, one of the deadliest places in the world, just to attempt communication. If those speakers died, that would have been 3% of the population of speakers lost to a language experiment. The curiosity of linguists truly knows no bounds. But this video does, as I have one final weird language to share. Piraha. Spoken deep in the Amazon rainforest of Brazil, Piraha has one of the fewest phonemes out of any language, that being at least 12. It has a 3-vowel system, but unlike most other 3-vowel systems which are A, I, and U, Piraha has A, I, and O. It has a handful of consonants, with a lot of variation within them. One of these allophones is the lateral alveolar linguolabial double flap, which has only been found in Piraha, and it's tonal, with 2 to 3 tones, which I think means that tones take up a higher proportion of Piraha's phoneme inventory than any other language. Sounds can also be substituted for whistles and for a change in pitch. Mothers even teach the language to their children by singing it. The grammar has a whole bunch of slots for suffixes, but what really takes the cake in Piraha is its vocabulary. It has one word for both mother and father, with no gendered equivalent. It doesn't distinguish between kinship terms past the word for sibling. It doesn't distinguish between singular and plural. It also has no words for color, only for light and dark. It only has 2 number words, which are only distinguished by tone and don't correspond one-to-one with any number, instead roughly meaning little quantity and large quantity. And to top it all off, Piraha has no words for abstract concepts. To the Piraha, if it doesn't exist concretely in the real world, it doesn't exist. So there are no words for concepts like idea, glory, honor, freedom, failure, or sadness. All these reasons are why Piraha gets my personal pick for the single weirdest language in existence. So when people see a weird sound in a language or a grammatical feature they're unfamiliar with, I can understand why they think of them as weird. But as a language nerd, I know it can get much, much weirder. And while when I call these languages weird, I may mean it in a good way, others might not mean it in such a positive light. But at the end of the day, no matter how normal or weird a language gets, they're just different. And seeing the differences in our ways of speaking can teach us to accept the differences we have as people. That's all I have to say. Agur!